Okay, this is a mind blower. The Anunnaki were supposedly, they came here and colonized Earth. There was books written about it. Sitchin wrote books about it. There's all kinds of information, and there's all kinds of documentation that was left, and carvings and all kinds of things from this period, from these Sumerians. And they talk about coming from the planet Nibiru to Earth to mine gold. And they discovered gold on Earth. Now, I'm going to show you something right now. All right, there's absolutely no question. They had some form of machinery here, cutting these slabs, making those walls. You see the width of this machine? Now, it appears that it was brought here out of the sky. It didn't get driven here, I don't think. And this is what they used to make those walls. And why were those walls made? I've been trying to figure it out. They must have been made for defensive reasons. It's all I can think of. Because they were a very warlike people, had all kinds of wars, they said. Now, this had to be done at the same time because this was wet, and then the walls were made and they were wet. And this is all from bodily tissues, bloody bodily tissues. I've shown it hundreds of times. Hundreds, literally. There it is right here. There's one of these tendon slabs that they cut, and there's still a piece of bone in it. There's still leaking blood and everything else. Most of them were nice clear tendon, but some of them, look at this one here, it's just a piece of scrap. You see it? The best ones were these ones that had the little bumps sticking off them, because those were tendons that were on the flat planes of your body, or of a creature's body. And then there's other tendons that run up the legs and so forth like that. It's all biology. And Jesus Christ said the earth is a body and the earth is a carcass. Okay, after my discovery of the giants, and I have giants, so they are discovered and they're factual, I really started to dig into this, and I went back to all of the ancient texts and the poets. They call them poets. They were writers. Hesiod was the first, basically, and he wrote the Theogony, which was about the Titans and the Olympians and Uranus, and he was the father of the Titans, and how all of that stuff. How he was castrated by his son Cronus, and just absolutely unbelievable. And this was also written, it was Anu was castrated by his son Kumabi in the Hittite story. Then they go into pseudo-archaeology, conspiracy theories, and they make it all sound like a joke. Well, it's not a joke to me. All right, here's some more from the Manuel Velikovsky archive. The deluge, the Nephilim, the giants, their astronomical knowledge. Why did they have all that knowledge about things? The planets, the ages, the Hebrew cosmology, all of that stuff. We're going to start getting deep into this because everything points to this being legitimate. Right. In this is the Gnostic library, which they discovered these texts right after World War II. Same basic time frame that they discovered the Dead Sea Scrolls, which I find very interesting, right after the Jews were slaughtered. Now, this is the Gospel of Thomas, and this was Doubting Thomas, who was Jesus' scribe, really, and he wrote down, these are the secret sayings the living Jesus spoke, and Didymus Thomas recorded. Now, it says, those who seek should not stop seeking till they find. When they find, they will be disturbed. When they are disturbed, they will marvel and will reign over all. And after that, they will reign, they will rest. Well, I don't know about all that, but marveling, yes. Disturbed, absolutely. 56 and 83. 56. Jesus said, whoever has come to know the world has discovered a carcass. And whoever has discovered a carcass of that person, the world is not worthy. That's 56 and was 80? Yeah, 80. Jesus said, whoever has come to know the world has discovered the body, and whoever has discovered the body of that one, the world is not worthy. Well, I'm going to tell you something. The earth is a body, and the earth is just literally littered with carcasses. It is everything there is, as far as I can determine, even in space, is biological. And I've shown this over and over and over and over. You see, this is biology. This is the mucosa. It could be your skin. It could be intestinal lining. It's the layer right underneath. There's this webby layer, which is called interstitium, and it is everywhere. And big creatures had big interstitium. You see these black balls? They're harder than hell. They do not fall apart. All the rest of the stuff is floppy. Well, guess what? Let's see if we can find something that looks like that. Well, look at that. This is somewhere in the United Kingdom, but that's the mucosal layer. This is the bloody red layer that has the balls all stuck in it, which was where the mucosa, the interstitium is, and then they erode out, and what's left over is the mud, which is this, and of course the skin and all that drops down, the white stuff falls down too, and these balls are the anchors. And the reason they have growth on them is because they're biological. And you can buy blood and bone meal to grow plants. They're growing things because there's biological stuff to grow on here. All right, this is from a site that my friend Tyson's Mud Fossil Adventures, he's got a site on YouTube, and he's got this huge creature out there in Oregon that he's been looking into, and this is a membrane. This is only the lower layer of the membrane. You go up the side of the cliff, and up above, there's 6 feet above is this layer. This is all washed away like that stuff at the interstitium I showed before. There's a aqueous layer, they call it. You see this little thing right here? That's this. That's one of these. You see these? These are the holes that come through these are the channels that let in, they're gateways to let things in and out of your membranes. At one time, the creatures were so big, bodies can float through there. In us, these are like molecules just barely get through here. I can't explain it, but I can tell you what, the earth is covered with it, and there's a fish and a giant dragon as well. And all of those things were talked about as too. All right, it appears this at one time, not long ago, was an ocean, and it collapsed right here, everything ran out. There's a giant fish and a dragon right here. Here's the giant fish. You just take your second and look at it. All right? This, I have come to realize, is the eye area. Okay, these are the scales. This is the fin at the top. There's the tail at the back. You see? And there's the fin at the top. Now, I believe that's the eye. So all of this stuff is kind of nasty because everything ran out from this area when I believe this was Atlantis, and I believe it collapsed, and all of this stuff, you can see it's all mud, ran out all this way. Plato said they would never speak of mud again after this, and he said it was right outside the straits, and I believe this is the straits he was talking about. Okay, which would be perfect, because that would be the inlet into the Sahara Ocean. And all of that drained out around and washed out over the top of what appears to be Atlantis. And to me, I looked at this very carefully. And there's a bunch of things to talk about here that I'm not going to go into. But you could, if you could look at this as boat docks and little inlets coming in here all over these different rings. You see, let's take the furthest out one. You see this? Look at this carefully. These look like channels coming in, and these look like little boat docks. I mean, I don't know. That's how they would, if it was well populated. Now, what is here? I don't know. And that is one of these rings. Okay? And then everything ran out. You can see it all trailed out of here. You see it? You can't miss it. I mean, a kid can, in a sandbox, knows this is what happens when water runs off of the mud. And it all collected out here as the Cape Verde Islands. And they know this is, they call this an alluvial plain, I believe, and they say it was an offshore collapse. What happened? This is where it collapsed. And here's where all of that stuff ran out. At one time, this must have been a vast inland sea. Now, I said there's a dragon. Well, there's the fish. And here's his fin right here. And there's a dragon right here. There's the dragon's head. I'm going to outline him so you can see it very clearly, because it's a gigantic dragon. Let's just see this whole size of it before we get started. It runs all the way across from here to here and attacking that fish. These are his legs. That's the tail. I'm going to start at the tail so you can see the dragon scales back here and the dragon scales up here. And he was actually attacking that fish. Here's the dragon scales back here. Whoops. How'd that happen? Yikes. Run for your life. Alright, let me back out of here again. I'm sorry. Alright, here's his tail right here. And it actually flutes way out. But let's see, this is the dragon scaled part. You can see how it's pretty easy to see the dragon scales. And this is what they call transition metal runoff of bodily fluids. And it's running out from these dragon scales. You see them? If you look at them close, you realize that's not your natural mountain range. You see that? You think that's a natural mountain range? And let me show you the other end. If you think that's natural, well, let's talk about his other end over here, up where the throat is. All right, now let's talk about what he looks like at this end, because this is the head. That's that bumpy nose they have, and it comes back around this way. That's the burning, flaming eye that they always speak of, trailing off there. This is that fluty-looking, fluffy stuff that's on the side of dragons on the parades. You always see them have that little stuff that runs down the side. All right, now, so here's his throat. All the way down, all the way down, all the way down, until it hits his stomach way down here. And now we're into the guts of the creature. So that is entirely his throat. That is a very, very long distance. And then you get into the body, and of course these are the legs. It actually has a cloaca, which indicates it was an avian creature. Cloaca is the way they poop. The urine and the poop goes together. I went through the whole digestive system. Now, he spit this stuff out here, and it came out of this yellow stuff. That's where it comes down, and it comes squirting down here, and it creates all of this toxic stuff. You see that? You see that? Look at that. You see that? That is almost identical to snake venom. And now this is coming out of his throat. And all of that stuff coming out of his throat is coming down at that fish to kill him, obviously. And it did cause some damage. This is vital flesh. Let's back it off again. Here's the fish. Here's his tail. All right. And this all happened at the same time when all this ran out, because you see this running over the top of his back? He had to have fallen down under as everything washed out, and this ran over, and this ran across the swale. That's where the tail swales in a fish, right in that back. So some of the mud ran over the top of him, and everything else ran around him, because he would be way off the, I don't know, many miles tall. I mean, that is a very, very, very long distance. And these are just gigantic creatures. So you could take it for whatever it's worth, but I'm going back to the ancient texts, and I'm taking them with a lot more seriousness. And if you don't understand, and they knew this, they had known this until just recently, when we just decided it was all silly. This is called the Drac River. And this is his neck. This is his throat. And these are all dragon scales. You see these scales? You see them? This is his throat right here. All right, and that ran down and down and down. And this throat was cut. Something cut this throat with a gigantic razor blade. You see the dragon scales? That's not average mountains. And that's what a geologist tell you. Oh, yeah, just mountains. No, they're not. Look at that. That's the fuzzy stuff on the side of the dragons that they have in the parades. How the hell did that get there? All right, now, you come all the way down his throat, scale, throat, fluffy, throat, scale. Boom! What happened there? He was cut with a great and mighty sword. And there's references to this. And on an old map, it shows this gash right across his throat. And apparently that's what killed him, because this is what all bled out here in the desert. You get a coroner, get anybody that knows autopsy stuff, and this is red and black. This is a red-blooded creature. He died, and all this is effluent. His body stopped right here. All right, this is where the body ran. All of this gooey stuff is all fluids that ran out. All right, so his body is way up there. That's all fluids. Take it for what it's worth, but we're going to dig in. I'm going to go try to figure this out, because Velikovsky knew a lot more, and Hesiod wrote what the daughters of Zeus told him to write. He was a herder on Mount Hermon, I think. I can't remember now. But anyway, he was a herder, and the daughters of Zeus came out and said, here, you're going to write the story of man. And he says, I can't write. They said, don't worry, sit down, you'll write. And he did. And he wrote a lot. And then Ovid, who was a big writer back in the Caesar time, he wrote all of the history from the beginning, all the way up to that time. And he talked about transforming the bodies of creatures into the earth, into the natural landscape. Because there is nothing but creatures. You see that? That's a moon. This is his tendon ball. This is exactly what that is. All those little dimples are these little dimples. This little piece that broke off is the stalk that runs down to attach that tendon ball. You see this? This is Herodotus' map. Atlantis was over here, right exactly near, well, Atlantis here. Atlas Mountains is here. Prior to that, this was an ocean, apparently. Here's another moon, Iapetus. That's the equatorial ridge. And the same thing here. Some tendons had 2 emplacements and some had 1. I got one around here that, you know, all the stuff obviously I have is small, but it's basically the same thing. They're tendon balls like that. They have a stalk that comes out of them, and this is the anchor. The stalk is what pulls back and forth against your muscle and your tendon. And then they have a real crust in them and a core, a lot of them. Some of them have just shells and so forth. And this is another one here. This one here is highly eroded, but that right there is basically very similar to what you're looking at there. These, I believe, were emplaced. At least that one for sure. That one might be one very similar to this, but they were all over the place. I mean, they're just everywhere. And the moons were, let's see, what else we got here? All right, that's Iapetus again. That's equatorial ridge. That's about it for that. Okay, I'm going to leave it at this for today, but I'm going to tell you one thing right now. The crazy thing about this is Jesus Christ is the only one that I know of that knew the earth was a body and a corpse, and even the Anunnaki didn't know it. The Sumerians, they didn't know it. So I'm going with Jesus Christ. And all this stuff is so crazy, it's insane, but it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's looking like there's a lot of truth to what was written in a lot of ways. Now, distortions, I don't know. We have to start to look at everything brand new again. We can start right from scratch again, because we never realized about the mud fossils, the giants, everything, things in space that they talked about cutting bodies up and making the moons out of them. And it's, as far as I'm concerned, I'm going with that. All that stuff, as far as I'm concerned, is true. Now, stick around and get people to do like little groups where you can sit around and watch this and say, here's what he's saying, what do you think? Because I'm going to go over Velikovsky's accounts and what he claims, well, what he says he has discovered. And because he did the research. Now, I'm not taking any credit for his research. I want to examine it and discuss it, and have other people discuss it that have other ideas than I do, because I'm pretty limited to what I understand. A lot of this stuff I have not a whole lot of abilities here. I'm trying to learn it. Because as far as I'm concerned, this is the only thing that is reality anymore. All the stuff we've been taught, forget about it. It's all totally just nonsense. History's wrong. Geology's wrong. Light can be accelerated. It slows down. The universe is filled with particles of light. We're scrubbing through them and heating up our atmosphere. It's not carbon blanketing the earth that's causing overheating. It's the scrub. Same thing with the sun. The sun's a corona, millions of degrees. The surface is like 10,000. The reason is they're scrubbed too. Everything we've been taught is really nonsense. So we have to start from scratch again. And I'm scratching.